All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully your favorite Chelsea podcast out there in the whole wide world, in the multiverse or universe that you would have at this exact moment. Dan, one of your hosts here. No Nick or Brandon, but it's a match preview. So you know what we're going to do. We're going to break down what Chelsea might be getting up to as they take on the, it makes me a little sick to say it, the league leading Tottenham Hotspurs on Monday, midday in the afternoon for those in the U.S. For, obviously at different times, depending upon where you listen from. For us here in the U.S. during the workday. And Sam, as we get into this one and as you help us break it down, just, I don't know, how sick are you feeling to your stomach about the fact that we're talking about the league leading Tottenham Hotspur all the way deep into the start of November, like into over almost a third of the season being done?
Positively diabolical. Let's just start with that. But I mean, our North London rivals do have a tendency of going top very early and then running out of steam later on. So I'm not sort of like holding on to my hands and saying that this is eventually how it's going to finish. There was this nice article by The Athletic saying that league tables don't shift too much throughout the season. And the positions that clubs are at right now will probably be changing by like about 20-25%. That's about it. Like, they're not going to be major deviations, but especially when it comes to certain teams, that tends to change. So I'm hoping that it happens again, because nothing would be worse than watching Spurs lift the league title. So I'm hoping it does not happen. And one of those times when Schadenfreude would definitely be on my menu, and I will happily revel in it.
Well, let's hope that we can be a part of the solution to Tottenham not winning the league by taking 3 points. And we're going to go through in this episode just what Spurs have been up to, how they've been off to a very flying start this part of the season, but how they're not a perfect team despite their league position. Go through the fitness that Chelsea players have currently, who Poch is able to select from, and what questions he might have to answer, and then make a few predictions on what we think might actually unfold in this match. But before we do that, we just want to say thanks to everybody who supports the podcast. You can do so for free with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Look, we have a lot of reviews there, but we always enjoy a few more. And we know people are going to be spending time with family. You're going to be at maybe the pub this weekend with friends. Ask someone to listen to the podcast for the first time and leave a 5-star review too. That would be super appreciated. Or borrow another friend's device and just leave a review on their device. Maybe they're an Arsenal fan and you get them to leave a 5-star review. That would be amazing too. You can also help support the podcast by going over to YouTube and subscribing to the London is Blue podcast channel. We are 20 people away from 29,000 right now, which means we're 1,020 people away from that 30,000 milestone we are looking up at the moment. And hey, it's another free thing that you can do to support the podcast. You can also hit the bell notification icon to get push notifications to know when we drop the video version of the podcast over there. And you can also go to patreon.com/onlyblue pod to support the podcast as well. Join the Discord community. Tons of fun there. But Sam, as we get into this one, looking at Spurs' recent run, there's a lot of wins. This is not a healthy thing for me to be looking at. Again, there is a little bit of a rumbly in the tumbly right now, and it's not because I'm hungry. It's because there's a little bit of sickness going on here, looking at the fact that their last loss came in the Cup against Fulham, 1-1, but it was a penalty knockout. And then the draw against Arsenal in the middle part of September being the last time that they did not win a match. This is disgusting. This is absolutely revolting. I don't even know why you put this image in the script. It's absolutely just traumatizing.
To be honest, like there's more to it than meets the eye. I think they were, let's be kind and say gritty in some junctures, and in other situations they were just plain fortunate to escape a very dire fate. For example, the Liverpool game, they were getting exploited left, right, and center. And then there was one red card, and then there was another, and then they were basically playing against 9 men and managed to get Joel Matip to score a 96th minute winner for them. So an own goal basically got them the win. And then against Sheffield United, they scored 2 stoppage time goals when they were 1-0 down. And I think that was down to effort more than anything else. But yeah, I mean, Sheffield United again playing with 10 men. So uh, have been lucky. Let's just say the fortune that has evaded us has sort of like helped them over the line. So I wouldn't look at all the greens and say everything's fine. I think Ange Postecoglou also knows that there are some issues to iron out. They've been impressive nevertheless. Like, for example, some of the things that they've done, the entire squad, the manager's done very, very well. But I wouldn't take this at face value and say, wow, they're unbeatable. I think they're very beatable. And let's hope that that statement does not come to bite me in the butt. But really, really, just in plain neutral terms, it's a good side performing slightly above their level. And, if we go at them hard, then there's something to take away.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because there was a Sky Sports graphic that's been doing the rounds the past couple of days. That's the expected points table, which is the fun way of saying based upon a match, if you had the expected goals allowed versus the expected goals for, that you would determine the winner of a game. Let's say the XG was 1 for one team and 0 for the other. But maybe the inverse is true, and it was flipped. So it was you actually let in, you actually scored 0, which is like a Chelsea problem, and the other team scored 1 goal. That you would have a negative in terms of like the point, or there'd be expected points that you should have. So it would actually be a positive. And so in that expected points table, Newcastle would be first, Manchester City would be second, Liverpool would be third, Arsenal would be fourth, Chelsea would be fifth on an expected points of 19.07. So we are set. It would be 7 points higher, 7.07 points higher than our current league position. And Tottenham would be in 6th place on 17.5 points with a minus 8.5. So they, to your point, have definitely been the beneficiary of some of the luck that Chelsea is not able to find at all. I don't know if we need to invest in some sage stock or some ritualistic healing or cleansing of the team or Stamford Bridge. Maybe reenact the Ted Lasso scene. But it does feel as if they are a good team playing well and are able to gut out some of those performances, like you said, and maybe also get the benefit of a few decisions that Chelsea just have not been able to touch or to have maybe break their way as significantly.
It's interesting you bring that up because earlier on in the season, I wrote about the table of justice, concept that Rasmus Ankersen sort of started at these Danish clubs, which were basically acting as feeder clubs to Brentford, and talking about how the table should actually look in terms of don't go by what is actually there, but go at the underlying metrics. And like you said, expected points is a good one. The example that he gives in his TED Talk is expected goal difference. And according to that, we would actually be 5th, the same that the expected points table sort of suggests. And Tottenham would be 7th in that metric. So, like I mentioned, I think they've conceded lesser than they should have. They Definitely do look scrappy in certain situations. Let's be very honest, they've got exceptional finishers in Maddison and Heung-min Son, who's been doing exceptionally well for an extended period of time. So they've scored more goals than they should. But I think that's by virtue of having good finishers and having good players who take their chances. So I think we come up against a side that, has been rejuvenated, has been given a shot in the arm. It's just to figure out how long that effect works. And hopefully it wears off just before they meet us.
Well, just looking at their record, 8-2-0, 26 total points, first in the league, a home record of 4-0 with 12 points, and away record of 4-2-0 and 14 points, 22 goals in total, 9 goals allowed, difference of plus 13, expected goals of 17.6, again, overperforming. Expected goals allows 12.4. Again, overperforming, so difference of 5.2. And missing players on their end. They are missing a few players. I don't necessarily know if I would say that any of the players that they are missing, though, Sam, are as critical or are starters in the team. Whereas when you compare and contrast to maybe Chelsea's list, which we'll go into in more detail about what Pochettino and the team had to say about fitness and expectations, when we talk about Chelsea, it does feel like they are in a better spot from a injury crisis.
Yeah, I think there are two players in that list that sort of like tell me that they would probably be in there. Destiny Udogie is a doubt. He missed the last game, I think, with an injury, but he should be fit enough to feature. He did play in the international break, I think, so he definitely will probably be there. He was a minor doubt. I haven't seen Andre's press conference for Spurs, but I think he should be available. And there is some sort of debate in terms of whether Richarlison, is a good choice at the left AM position in their formation. But the other guy would be Manos Solomon, who's got quite a good record already in a short space of time. So I guess he would have been the other guy that would have probably been a 50-50, maybe even skewed a little bit, saying maybe 60-40 for him to be in there. But apart from those two, I think they're very, very well off compared to us, and we're missing like the heart of our team in a majority of players.
All right. Well, that's a little bit of setting the stage, setting the table, getting into our festive hosting mood as we get closer to major holidays at the end part of the year. So getting in that rhythm. But we're going to come back and actually get into the meat and potatoes of it all with looking at the way that Tottenham have been playing under Big Ange and leading the league. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. All right, Sam. So I think there's a lot of things that are exciting about the way that this Spurs team has played. Like if you just took the name Spurs off it and gave them a different uniform and didn't know that they were Spurs, you would say that they are a transform side, partially addition through subtraction with the removal of Harry Kane. I think there's changes to the way they play based upon the way that Ange's style is bringing in some different ways of approaching, but it does feel to be a very direct approach to trying to create high opportunities and frequent opportunities to score regularly. And it has panned out for them so far, but that is my oversimplification, and I will let you get into the specifics of what that type of play actually is going to look like for those who haven't watched or haven't been able to suffer through watching Spurs look so dominant.
No, I mean, simple things offer the most substantial reflection. So I would completely say that you've got certain foundations of the argument absolutely spot on. So a lot of us were figuring out whether they would be the same without Harry Kane when he moved to Bayern Munich. And what Ange has done, I mean, he was not even their first choice manager, something that he himself has mentioned publicly. But what he's done is arguably just make them a more confident side. They're doing things that they didn't do before under their previous managers. They're being more adventurous. I think there are certain challenges that have been given to them to play a certain way, to reinvent themselves as players, to fit into different roles. I think that's excited the youngsters. And it's complemented by a certain, I would say, a Spurs kind of DNA, which coincidentally Mauricio Pochettino instilled in them in terms of just extremely quick on the break, being able to make good decisions and then finishing off their chances with a high degree of success. And obviously Kane and Heung-min Son were central to that. And they've also got Dejan Kulusevski, who's been very good since he came to the club. But now instead of Harry Kane, they've got James Maddison, and they got him for a good deal. And essentially what they've done is replace one great individual with another who is able to consistently offer good output in terms of creativity and also goals. So not oversimplifying it, but it's just a good team with promising foundations with very good individuals up front who are doing the damage. So I think that would be my assessment of Tottenham Hotspur and where they are from sort of like a helicopter view.
And then if we want to go and start clicking into some of the specifics, so people like to look at the formation, how they're playing, what is the principle or the way that they're attacking. We know we've seen, I think the fullbacks are a very interesting component with how this team sets up and how they play. I mean, again, we've seen the evolution of fullbacks in football over the last 3 or 4 years with the way that either Chelsea were using them under Antonio Conte, to the way that everybody can be a fullback in Pep Guardiola's side, and then now the way that Ange and Tottenham are using them. So what are some additional specifics that people should be aware of, for if they aren't aware of how Tottenham has been playing?
So, I mean, they've basically stuck to a 4-2-3-1, something that, again, Poch also prefers in his formation, something that we used extensively in preseason. And it's pretty conventional in terms of like the positional way of playing. They go 2-3-5 in attack, and it's 4-1-4-1 out of possession. So pretty similar to what we do in terms of out of possession stuff, in terms of the formation we play. But how those numbers sort of come together is extremely intriguing. You mentioned the fullbacks. I think that's arguably the most interesting concept of what Ange has sort of brought in. It's almost Pep like what he did at Bayern Munich in terms of trying to figure out how to stop transitions in a very transition heavy league. And how Pep decided to do that was not by getting better defensive midfielders, but by effectively moving his fullbacks narrow and using them as inverted fullbacks or halfbacks. So making sure that they were able to stop transitions and be more compact in that 2-3-5 shape. So getting defenders to do defensive jobs, but also adding quality in the middle of the pitch. So I think what he's done now is get his two fullbacks, Pedro Porro on the right side. Emerson Royal has also played there. And then left-hand side, you've got Destiny Udogie, who's a new signing. And he's been one of, I would say, a nice revelation for them. He's done some things very, very well. He looks like a very good player with a good ceiling. So he's been on the left-hand side. And what's happened is that in certain phases, for example, let's talk about build-up. So when they're trying to build out from the back, and when they try to play it out from the back, they've got two centre backs, but their fullbacks perform several different roles. You'll often find that they invert into midfield. So you've got Yves Bissouma in the middle, and then instead of two midfielders on either side, you've actually got both fullbacks in those midfield positions to try and build up play. So they're trying to occupy those roles. And sometimes you even see them in the 2-3-5 in attack. So you see them in the half spaces. And what they do is they effectively try to pin the centre back on that corresponding side back. So you can't double team on the winger on the same side. So Spurs often rely on getting the ball very quickly to back to front. So if you want to hit it wide to say Kulusevski, then Poro's job, if he's in the half space, is to make sure that the centre back on that side does not jump to his fullback's aid and offer a 2v1 against Kulusevski, just to make sure that there's a 1v1 on the right-hand side. So Ange has used his fullbacks in sort of multi-dimensional roles. He's giving them positional ways of helping his attackers, even without the ball, which I think is very, very interesting. It's not something that we haven't seen before. It's just that we haven't seen Spurs do it before, which is very interesting. So I would say the fullbacks look galvanized under Postecoglou. And what is, again, I think a major shift is just how well they're playing out from the back. He's coached them in a way that there's confidence. There is a sense of this is what we want to do to beat the bigger side. So they want to keep the ball. They're very possession heavy. They almost like the numbers are extremely similar to ours, maybe in the low 60s, around 61% of the possession, average possession in the league. So they're using short passes, trying to get pressure by playing out of difficult situations. So they draw the opponents to press. And as soon as you commit, say, 4 or 5 players, then they immediately shift gears and they try to push past and basically hurt you on the break. And they've got players to do that. So I would say it's a good combination of positional principles along with a very organic understanding of players, quality players in the front four, something that I think we also are trying to emulate. We talk about Pochettino being a very positional coach, but he also likes his players to have a certain degree of fluidity, a certain sense of freedom of expression. And we've seen Palmer given that. For example, you've got a structural framework that he has to follow, but even in that framework, he's ended up creating a lot of chances since he's come for us. So I think it's similar to Tottenham, but obviously we don't have somebody of the caliber of a Heung-min Song who's been performing and scoring for a number of seasons in terms of goals and assists. And obviously Maddison has added to that. So it's a good base to build on. I would say that he's given them nice fundamentals to sort of sculpt and make into something more beautiful. But as a Chelsea fan, I will go as far as to say I've actually enjoyed watching them play.
I know it feels, again, like a dirty thing to say, but he has done, and the players, because they have to do the execution on the pitch, have made it a side that is less, you're less able to make fun of and criticize in the way that we typically would. And that is not something that we enjoy. I think the other thing that's been interesting, Sam, is the addition of Maddison in particular. He was a player that I think a lot of top sides in the Premier League were interested in, given Leicester's relegation. One player that was deemed too old to come to Chelsea, so he fell off the radar for a individual that we might go recruit. And again, we're doing a different philosophy, we're taking a different approach, but boy oh boy, he has been a transformative player in their attack, particularly when you add him and Son together. That is just a phenomenal attack pairing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if Maddison was under 22, we would have probably got him. But I think he was just outside the age bracket in terms of not young enough for us, So, but he's done very well. I think he's shown the kind of quality that he has at Leicester, and it wasn't really a good season for him in terms of the unit, but his quality, his individual quality, his creative tendencies shown through, and I think those are now just glimmering with a different luster now that he's in a confidence side and he's got very, very good players. I wouldn't say in terms of a forward, because he had Jamie Vardy to finish off things for the longest time, but I think he's enjoying playing in a setup which allows him to express himself and do it in a side where he has more possession and they're not sitting back and playing on the break exclusively. So I think that's good. But it's interesting how they've gone from Son Kane's double threat to, I would say, Maddison and Son as a duo. Now, in the Premier League, both of them are averaging 2.8 shots per game. Both are very good shooters with either foot. Maddison, coincidentally, is the league's fourth best creator with 6, and Son is the 6th best creator with 5. And both of them with 11 have more than half of the 21 our whole side has created so far. So it's a heavy creative burden that has been placed on them. I would say as a 10, you also give him the liberty to pick his pockets, to pick his moments, and it's a role that suits him very well. I think he loses a bit when he's playing as an 8. He probably doesn't have the recovery pace or the kind of pressing that you require back to front, to shunt back to front when you're playing him as an 8. But as a 10, he's often picking out these pockets. It's similar to what we saw Enzo do when he was playing that number 10 role for the longest time. So he was often trying to be the between the lines presence, quickly pick up the ball and then play the ball in behind. And there are 2 games that I saw before we came on the podcast, Arsenal and Liverpool. And in both games, he had these incredible moments where he just got the ball in a pocket and he slotted a through ball from, I think, like 20 yards away in between like 2 lines and like 6 players for Richarlison. And that led to 2 goals, 1 offside. But it's just a testament to the vision and the quality that he brings on the ball. And I think it's just elevated their attack to a level where you've got somebody like him who's the heartbeat and the fulcrum and can essentially create shots for a variety of good attackers. So I think that's definitely been very good for them. And in general, Spurs, I mean, they've got the most touches in the penalty area in the Premier League, and they're 40 clear of the second best side, which coincidentally is also us.
Well, it's nice to be, I guess, in the realm of where kind of the that metric is, I guess. Any other strengths that you want to highlight before we talk about the fact that they are not a perfect side? There is no perfect side in football. Spurs are no different. They do not, even though they are the league leaders and potentially overperforming their XG, overperforming their expected points, that they are susceptible.
Yeah, lots of weaknesses for sure. I mean, I would like to highlight a couple of things that I think we should be wary of, because I think they coincide with some of the weaknesses that we have. One of them being that 16 of 22 goals that they have in the Premier League have come in the second half. And 8 of the 10 goals that we've conceded in the Premier League have also come in the second half. So it's usually while chasing games. So you don't want to be 1-0 behind to Spurs in the second half, because they are very good at coming back from being a goal down, and also when they're sort of like moving into the second half and when they have something to protect. So I think we should be very careful of that. And we talk a lot about Son and Maddison, but they've also got other places where they can cause a lot of damage. Like I mentioned, Kulusevski on the right-hand side. They've got Richarlison on the left. and they effectively try and hit those wide players as quick as possible. And both of them have a lot of quality. So when you look at the numbers, I was just going through like creative numbers for all of them. They sit top in terms of shots created with 135, and Son, Maddison, and Kulusevski have created 78 of those. Just to put that in context, our entire team has 98. So those three guys alone are capable of creating a lot of shots for each other. They're also prolific shot takers. So a lot of good things to be careful about. But like you mentioned, a lot of weaknesses, which obviously we'll talk about. But yeah, I'll also like to highlight that the fact that they're also very aggressive in the press. The PPDA, like the passes per defensive action, a metric that we use to figure out how aggressive somebody's press is. So the lower the number, the lesser passes you wait for before jumping into a press or into a defensive action. So they're lowest in the league with 7.43. And then they tend to go very quick, very hard. They try to win the ball back and basically like do turnovers in dangerous areas and try to get their attackers to do stuff. So they also have the second most yellows in the league with 32, and they're also first for fouls drawn with 118. So they tend to play dirty as well. They also know how to win ugly fouls and slow the game down. All these things we definitely have to be careful about, because unfortunately these are things that have, bit us when we are trying to get in front and do some damage of our own.
Yeah, I know that the fouling is going to be interesting. And look, no one in the Premier League has to worry about Anthony Taylor at the moment, considering his demotion to the championship. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets adjudicated during and in the match. I think there's maybe some other thoughts. I mean, I guess, they're not as they're also I would say a not tall side to Sam. Like that would be kind of a consideration within like the set piece kind of consideration, even though we sort of can consider the Badiashile goal in the midweek as a set piece goal, though it really took a lot of working to get there. It feels like that's not necessarily a major danger area for us to kind of have to worry about. Obviously, you don't want to give anybody more dead ball opportunities than they deserve, but another area where, we might not have as many major concerns. It's really more the counter or against the run of play or, that we have to be wary of. But in moments where, Chelsea are able to, potentially earn that corner, earn a free kick, that we might be the more dangerous side.
Yeah, you're spot on there. So starting with the weaknesses, I would say that the aerial strength is definitely a concern. They're 15th worst, I think, in the aerial prowess in the league. They haven't conceded a goal from set pieces yet, but when they're going long from back to front, it's pretty evident that they don't have the attackers to hold up. Son tends to do well purely owing to experience and sometimes being at the right place at the right time. But just in terms of winning the ball, making sure that you're getting your knockdowns in the right areas, struggling. I think they tend to struggle when the play goes long. And like you mentioned, I think there's only one player out of the 11 that started, I would say 10 outfielders that started in the game against Crystal Palace. Only one of them for Spurs has a win percentage above 50, which is Christian Romero. And everybody else is below 50%. And that's, I would say, a bit of a danger compared to statistically the best aerial side in the Premier League. So we're somewhere around 60 plus somewhere the last time I checked. So if there's an 18% gap there, then obviously you want to exploit it in set pieces. They look well drilled. They look like they're coached well. In terms of the set pieces issues that I saw, some shots conceded from the edge of the box, from near post headers. So maybe that's something that we look to exploit, but we haven't really caused as much damage as we should, considering that we do have, aerial people, aerially dominant people in the side. So, like you said, Benoit coming back and Big Ben giving us something to chime about, hopefully turns those fortunes in the right direction, and we can get away from there. But yeah, I would say that's one of the weaknesses that definitely we should be looking to exploit. The second, I would say, is structural. He's again, I don't want to go on and bring the Poch and Spurs link over again, but they're also, by Ange's virtue and the way that they play with inverted fullbacks, I think they're very narrow by definition. And when they're getting those players very narrow, it's just easier to press them. When you've got 5 players in the space of, I would say, 15, 20 yards, like a small box. It's just easier to counter press. The distances are smaller. So you basically, like, I would say a lot of the issues that they've had is when they're trying to play out of crowded areas, and when they're trying to play out from the center, when there are like already about 6, 8 bodies in the middle, and they get caught out, and then effectively they drop a hammer on their own foot. So it's something that is an issue. I think it's something that you have to exploit as a narrow side. You also tend to get this feeling that they are susceptible to switches. So whenever the side tries to scrunch to one side, you can effectively move pressure by just switching it over and over again. This is something Liverpool did very well. Van Dijk was looking for constant long balls, 1v1 from um, back from the left hand side to the right hand side against Destiny Udogie, because you want him to be in those positions 1v1. There were also some nice switches from the right hand side to Luis Diaz on the left hand side. So I would say that when the side is very narrow, a lot like us, there is scope to basically exploit them by switching it to the other side. Liverpool also got a lot of joy when trying to play down the wide channels. They played those balls down the line, and when Spurs try to basically get away from their narrow shape and jump out wide, that's when gaps started to appear and the organization looked a little clunky. So I would say those things you would definitely focus on. Another one that I've noticed is, although they're trying to play out from the back, and you can tell that it's a very new thing for them, they are prone to errors. When they're playing out, certain players in particular have been guilty of giving the ball away when they're trying to play through high pressure situations. Yves Bissouma has been caught. Destiny Udogie has he turned back, and I think he basically, without looking, he put a back pass towards the goalkeeper, and Eddie Nketiah basically latched onto it, and could have had a 1v1 against Vicario, but ended up shooting at his near post, and the shot was saved. And Vicario, their goalkeeper, also looks like he's not yet accustomed to playing in a situation where there's an incredible amount of on-ball pressure for him to pick out that eye of the needle pass. So he gave away a ball straight to Gabriel Jesus from a build-up situation, and it was just 1v1, and Jesus, for some reason, just like skied it from point-blank range. But he does look like he has a tendency of going long very quickly. If you pressure him, if you get down his throat, he will try to go long. And as I told you about the point before, the moment Spurs try to go long to a side that is short, doesn't have good aerial proficiency, then you tend to disrupt them very well. So Liverpool did it well. I would say that a press, make them go long strategy works very well to disrupt an attack. I think that's something that we should actively be looking at. The other thing that I would say is maybe their shape, the 4-1-4-1 shape that they take out of possession. You've got these spaces on either side of the defensive midfielder, so you can effectively try to pick out those pockets, or you can try to bypass it altogether. I again pick out Liverpool because I think they did it very well before the 2 red cards. One was basically Alisson trying to go long directly from goal kicks to Salah against Udogie. So you basically bypass the front 5. Or what he basically did was he tried to trigger the press by pushing the ball up to Szoboszlai in the middle of the park, making Spurs snap into a counter press and then basically going wide. So you can exploit certain gaps in their formation. There are, I think, issues structurally that are available for us to exploit. So again, I think Poch's team must be looking at that and saying that, we can take advantage of those. And the last point I would say is that they tend to be a little too aggressive at times, that the counter press can be prone to being played around. They tend to commit 4 to 5 players when they're pressing extremely hard, and especially against a side like us, who I would say are like maybe in the top 5 in the league in terms of playing out of pressure. I think you can definitely play around them. You can get their narrow shape to become a little disoriented, maybe like lure them out, bait them with certain passes, and then pull it through. Liverpool did up, backs, and throughs. So basically, like passing it, getting it back, and then attacking the space with passes. They did it out wide, which works very well. So I think you can maybe get a formative side to commit some of the mistakes in their execution. So overall, I would say, yeah, lots of things actually. And like I said, it's not a team without its weaknesses. It's just that they haven't been exploited well enough. And if they've been exploited, then 2 red cards have stopped them from being completely exploited over the 90 minutes. So lots of it to take in for the team. And I would say there are different approaches the side can take to exploit it.
Well, that gives us the blueprint, as it were, for how Chelsea might be able to take advantage of this Spurs side. We're going to take a very quick break, and when we're back, we're going to talk about how Poch might go at it with the players that he has available, what the current fitness of the side is, make our lineup prediction, and talk about where we think this match might net out in the end. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, Sam. So I'm just going to run down the considerations from a team fitness perspective, because the club is doing this thing now, which I guess, considering when you have a third or more of the side in undergoing rehabilitation programs, that you should try to find a way to be transparent in how your players are doing. So the club is releasing this list ahead of the matches. We know that Armando Broja is continuing to receive treatment for the irritation on the knee. Trev Chalobah continuing undergoing a program. Ben Chilwell undergoing a program and out of the country this week. Chukwuemeka undergoing his program still. Wes Fofana undergoing his program. Romeo Lavia undergoing his program. Mykhailo Mudryk has returned to full team training, even putting out a post on Instagram to let people know he's excited or happy to be back on the pitch. And then Nkunku also undergoing his rehabilitation program as well. So in general, it sounds like the only one who maybe, or two maybe, who get close to the match is most likely Mudryk and Broja being available. But I think the big question, and we teased this after the Blackburn Rovers match review with Dave and with Nick, is that there might be a question about, do you go back to the Arsenal lineup, which did not have the recognized striker and a little bit more of a fluid front three or an attack, or do you persevere with Nico Jackson as the starter, understanding that he is not yet the perfect article when it comes to a Premier League striker or the striker for Chelsea? And so where are you landing on a will he, won't he type of situation for Pochettino as he evaluates what the best option is from an attacking lineup?
I think you can go either way, to be honest. Like I mentioned, I think there are different ways to exploit it, but I think there is a side with Jackson and without Jackson, and both of them can work provided what you're sort of focusing on. So if you go with Jackson, let's say that then I would try to use my center forward to basically pin the back line. I'm just going to try and make sure that he's occupying both center backs at all time. And this is something Liverpool also did with Cody Gakpo, who I would say is not a center forward either. They had Darwin Núñez on the bench, but just basically made sure that he was the one trying to be there in the spaces, making sure that both of them didn't step out too often, because the moment they did, one of them did, then it would be 1v1 at the back. So effectively using Jackson as somebody who was pinning both center backs, and maybe like as a player who's able to maybe stop double teaming on the wide ends. If you're trying to get 1v1, like Sterling 1v1 on the right hand side, I would say that fullbacks are weaknesses. So if you're looking at Porro, for example, on the right, or Udogie on the left, then if you're getting Sterling and hopefully Mudryk 1v1 against those guys, then there's a good chance that you would want to stop double teaming from the center backs. And the way that you do that, if Jackson's not going to be the force that he is in the box, then you try that by making sure that you're basically being around the center back and preventing him from jumping out. So I think that's something that you can do to use Jackson. I don't think he's going to get much change by running in behind, because Mickey van der Ven is a demon. I don't think I've seen a faster center back in a long, long time anywhere in the world. He's extremely quick. And I think even if Mudryk runs in behind, there's a good chance that there will be an even foot race. You know, he's extremely quick. So maybe try your center forward to try and basically create space behind the last line. It's, again, I would take things from something that's worked, like Liverpool used Gakpo for that and effectively used Salah to create, cutbacks on the other side. So you were using your other side's winger to come inside and basically try and get a shot in. So if Sterling's got the ball, then the center forward is going to push both center backs behind. And then you'd ask Mudryk to come narrower towards the edge of the box to try and finish off from there. Because I've noticed this, that when Spurs are, especially in transition or when they're in chaos, both their double pivots tend to try and drop deeper into the back four, so they leave the edge of the box sometimes unoccupied. So maybe that's how you exploit it. You push them back and you create space at the edge of the box to exploit. So maybe that's something that you can do with Jackson. And if you're going without Jackson, then I would say then you rely on something that you did against Arsenal. You put stock in the idea that Romero and Van de Ven don't have enough quality on the ball to cause you a lot of damage. So you sit back, you essentially press sparingly, but you guard Maddison, you guard Saad, you guard Bissouma, and you try to basically get them to put the ball centrally and then try to win the ball back as quick as possible. It worked against Arsenal in the first half. I think there's a good chance that that strategy also works against Spurs. So it also works, like I said, if their fullbacks are inverting into the middle, then obviously you've got an advantage with an extra midfielder who's dropping back and doing the defensive work. And Palmer tends to be extremely good at reading where the next pass is going to be. He's shown that he intercepts a lot in those situations. So I would say it's a pretty viable strategy to do. It's just which one works better. And I think both of them are effective. I don't know which one I'd go with, honestly. But yeah, I think there's a lot to ponder about when it comes to Pochettino's team selections.
I think the other question then is on the backside of the lineup, which would be now we have Badiashile, who just played a very comprehensive game, albeit against maybe a little bit of a lower level competition. And then we know that Marc Cucurella has been back in fine form. We have Reece James, who Pochettino did allude to in his press conference, may not be able to play the full 90, but most likely, given the way that he was creating those runs, being able to pull off some shots on the kind of right-sided overloads or the attacks that we were putting together, is that he most likely starts. What does that do to Badiashile, Disasi, Cucurella? It feels like that's a little bit of a mixed bag at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely a big issue because I think Cucurella and Disasi both have sort of blown hot and cold. There have been moments where I felt like Cucurella's 1v1 defending has been inconsistent. Like Saka first half, he was excellent, but the second half, he was very bad. I think he got beaten on 2 big occasions, and it was just like, the kind of stuff that you want to avoid against good opponents, especially with the likes of Kulusevski coming up against him. And Disasi was obviously to blame for the first Brentford goal on the back post. He's done a lot of errors from here and there when he's tracking back, when he's, in chaotic situations. I would say maybe like Colville at left back, maybe Badiashile at left centre back, and then the right, you have to make a decision, because if you put Silva there, then with James pushing forward, do you want to risk it? It's the question. So it's a difficult decision, but maybe it should be, like, in my opinion, I think if Badiashile is fit to play about 60, 70 minutes, then it would be Colville, Badiashile, and Disasi.
Ooh, all right. Well, I'm going to transition it then, because you've started to indicate a little bit what your lineup is going to be. What is the full 11 that you're rolling out to start this match?
Oh, well, so I think no change at goalkeeper. Sanchez for sure. Badiashile for extra height, making sure that we try to exploit them on set pieces, plus safer bet against their wide players. I think he'll be up against Kulusevski, so Colville will be up against Kulusevski, so I think I trust him more than Cuckoo. Reece James on the right. The midfield remains the same. Enzo, Caicedo, and Gallagher. And I would probably say Palmer, Sterling definitely have to be there, but the choice will be between, if Mudrik's fit, and Nicholas Jackson. So I would probably go with Mudrik if he's ready for 60.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm almost there with you. So I think I'm not saying this is my preferred 11, but I'm just saying I think this is where Pochettino will go based upon the trends we've seen from him this season. So my guess is, on the left-hand side of the defense, we'll keep Sanchez between the sticks. Hopefully it is a Bob performance and not a Robert performance, or Roberto, as one commentator called him during the midweek match, which was very interesting. I think you get Reece James as right back. You get Thiago Silva in the defense alongside, I think, Badiashile. And then Levi ends up being left back. So I think that just is something that Pochettino feels very comfortable with. I do think it is the Gallagher, Enzo, Caicedo show from a midfield perspective. And then alongside your thoughts, I think getting the goal midweek, even after a questionable total performance, Raheem Sterling will get a nod to start in this match alongside Cole Palmer. And then I do think as long as Mykhailo Mudryk passes the test to be healthy, that he will end up being a part of that attacking three as well. So not much differentiation between our two, but maybe just a few differences based upon how we think Pochettino will or won't line up.
Okay, so 2 questions. Score prediction as well as who's your key man?
Oh, man, I think Enzo has to be the key man, just in terms of getting us in a position and setting us up to allow Chelsea to score in this game. And then I think that the score prediction, I feel like it's a draw. Like, I would love for it to be a win. I'm more hopeful that we can just even take a single point off this and then take, really effectively 2 points off of Spurs in their pursuit of the support of their idea of trying to be the league champions. So we at least take 2 points off them. I'm going 1-1 draw. What about you?
Yeah, I think my key player is Robert Sanchez. I think he will be definitely key. Spurs tend to put a lot of pressure on the build-up, and he's looked a little wayward in terms of trying to play out of pressure situations. So I would keep an eye on that. I think that could be decisive. Plus, if we have to get out of pressure situations and if you're trying to hit the wide pockets, his long kicking has been off. In the last game against Blackburn, he picked out some nice passes. So I think if he gets the right ones here for Sterling and Mudryk or Jackson, we could be in business. So I think it's a huge game for him. He's going to be definitely my key player here. And in terms of score prediction with you, I would say a 1-1, considering we are better away from home than we've been at home. So I think that also factors in. And the fact that both teams are maybe like looking for that edge in the London supremacy derby. So I think gives it a good amount of spice. So 1-1.
All right. Well, we love to hear your thoughts. If you're watching or listening on YouTube, you should leave them in the comments. You should tweet at us. You should hit us up on Threads, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're watching or listening to this. You should let us know what your score predictions are and if you agree or disagree with the Sam or Dan lineup. But that's going to do it for this episode. We are hopeful that you get to enjoy a weekend that cannot be spoiled by Chelsea's having a poor result, and enjoy a Monday match in this fixture between Chelsea and Spurs. But that's going to do it for this episode. So thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We really appreciate it. Go subscribe, leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Help people find the show. We really appreciate it. And until next time, you know what to do, Chelsea fans. Enjoy your weekend and keep the blue flag flying high.